So what happens when a truly brutal king finally dies? Does his kingdom breathe a sigh of relief? Well, not this time. We're about to get into the absolute chaos that erupted after the death of King Herod the Great. This wasn't just a simple succession. No, this crisis spiraled into a situation where an entire nation ended up on trial right in front of the Roman emperor.
And that's the central question here, isn't it? A hated king is finally dead. What's next? For the people of Judea, you'd think this would be a moment of liberation, right? I mean, they had suffered for decades under Herod's tyranny. But instead of freedom, what they got was the beginning of a whole new nightmare.
So let's look at this tyrant's legacy. A kingdom in total crisis. Yeah, this transition of power was, well, anything but peaceful. The second Herod was gone, all that simmering resentment just boiled over. And you know who was right in the middle of it all? His chosen heir.
All right, so meet the main character in this part of our story. Archelaus, Herod's chosen successor. He steps up to claim the throne, but wow, his rule begins with an act of just shocking brutality. See, Archelaus was desperate to secure his father's throne, and he clearly thought the best way to do that was to prove he was just as ruthless as his dad. He wasted absolutely no time making his mark, and he did it in the most horrific way you can imagine.
3,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many of his own people Archelaus had slaughtered. And get this, he did it during a religious festival. He literally filled the holy temple with bodies. The message couldn't have been clearer. My rule will be a rule of fear, just like my father's.
Okay, so to really understand this political chaos, you have to see it for what it was, a massive, intense family drama. You've got Archelaus, who was the heir according to Herod's final will, but then there's his brother, Antipas, who pipes up and says, hey, wait a minute, an earlier will named me king. And of course, you've got another brother, Philip, kind of hanging around in the background, hoping to get his own piece of the pie. It's a classic family feud, right? Except this one had the fate of an entire nation hanging in the balance.
Okay, so with Judea in absolute turmoil, the whole conflict gets a major change of scenery. We're moving from the Middle East to the very heart of the empire, Rome. This thing has escalated. It's not just a family squabble anymore. We're talking about an unprecedented legal showdown in front of the most powerful man in the world.
So try to picture this. A delegation of 50 Jewish leaders with a crowd of 8,000 supporters behind them travels all the way to Rome. And they're not there to sightsee, they're there to plead their case directly to Emperor Augustus. I mean, imagine the scene. Caesar Augustus gathers his council in the incredible Temple of Apollo. On one side, you've got Archelaus and his crew, and on the other, these 50 leaders, backed by thousands of Roman Jews, about to put their own royal family on trial. The stakes are just unbelievably high.
And let me tell you, this delegation did not hold back. They came out swinging, and their first target was the father, Herod. They basically argued he was never a legitimate king to begin with. Their words, he was the most barbarous of all tyrants, a brutal despot who tortured his own people and bled the country completely dry.
And to really drive home just how bad things were, they made this absolutely stunning claim. They said, look, the Jewish people suffered more in just a few decades under Herod than they did in all the centuries combined since they came back from the Babylonian exile. I mean, think about that. That's an incredible accusation to make.
So after tearing down the father's legacy, they turned their full attention to the son, Archelaus. And their main argument? He's a chip off the old block. They pointed directly to that massacre, saying he began his reign with the murder of 3,000 citizens. It was, as they put it, as if he had a mind to offer so many bloody sacrifices just to prove he was his father's genuine son. That number, 3,000, that was the bloody heart of their case against.
And all this led to their proposal, which was honestly just radical. You have to understand, they weren't just asking for a different king. No, they begged Caesar to get rid of the monarchy altogether, abolish it. They actually asked for their country to be joined to the Roman province of Syria. They said they would rather be ruled directly by, and I love this phrase, tolerable Roman governors than have to deal with another Herodian tyrant. That's how desperate they were.
So what was the defense's response to all this? Well, Archelaus' advocate, a guy named Nicolaus, basically flipped the script. He argued the problem wasn't the kings, it was the people. He painted the entire Jewish nation as being hard to be ruled and naturally disobedient to kings. Essentially, he was saying, it doesn't matter who the king is, these people are just ungovernable.
All right, so the arguments have been made. Both sides have had their say. And now, the fate of an entire nation rests in the hands of one man, Emperor Augustus. What's he going to do?
But Augustus, he doesn't give an answer right away. In a total power move, he just hears both sides and then dissolves the assembly. Poof, everyone's sent home. So for several agonizing days, nobody knows anything. The future of the Herodian dynasty, the entire nation of Judea, it's all just hanging in the balance.
When the verdict finally drops, it all comes down to a new title. Archelaus does not get to be called king. Instead, he's named ethnarch. Now, what's an ethnarch? It basically means ruler of a nation. It sounds important, but it's actually a step down from king. Think of it like a probationary title. Rome was basically telling him, all right, kid, we'll give you some power, but you have to prove you deserve it before we even think about calling you a king.
So here's the final decision. Caesar splits the kingdom up. Archelaus gets the biggest slice of the pie, Judea, Samaria, and Idumea, which brought in a massive 400 talents a year. Now, to give you some perspective on that, a single talent was worth about 20 years of wages for a regular worker. So we're talking about an insane amount of money. His brothers, Antipas and Philip, they got smaller territories and were named tetrarchs, which literally means ruler of a fourth part. And just like that, Herod's unified kingdom was officially broken into pieces. So when you look at it, the verdict was a brilliant political compromise, very Roman. The Jewish delegation, they didn't get direct Roman rule like they asked for, but they did stop Archelaus from being crowned king, and they got the kingdom broken up. Archelaus, he got power, sure, but not the crown he so desperately wanted. And the real winner here? Caesar, of course, who made it crystal clear that Rome was the ultimate authority. But this solution created a really fragile and tense situation on the ground. You've now got these Roman-appointed rulers governing a population that's divided and deeply resentful.
And that's the real kicker, isn't it? Caesar's compromise didn't really make anyone happy. It solved the immediate crisis, sure, but it left behind these deep divisions and a whole lot of simmering resentment. So the big question we're left with is this. By breaking up the kingdom and putting these unpopular rulers in charge, was Augustus actually creating stability? Or was he just planting the seeds for even bigger, bloodier conflicts down the road?